This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Anything discussed during this podcast does not, and is not intended to, constitute legal advice. Instead, all content is for general entertainment purposes only. Listeners should contact their attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal matter. Listening to, contacting us, or any of the links or resources contained within this podcast and/or website does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views expressed during this podcast are those of the individual lawyers in their individual personal capacities only.
All the legal ladies, all the legal ladies, all the legal ladies, all the legal ladies.
Welcome to All the Legal Ladies. Unwind with us as we navigate the fascinating world of legal tales, precedents, and the occasional objection-worthy joke. Good day to you.
Good day.
Good day, ma'am.
I was going to say that. Good day. I don't know where that came from. That's how we're going to start today.
All right.
So on a little icebreaker to start talking about, white lies. Do you like them? Do you allow them? Do you tell them?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Where did the term white lie come from?
Oh gosh, we're going to research that now.
Let's go to Google really quick and see. That is a fascinating question.
I don't know. I'm kind of is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Right.
Belief. Just not everything needs to be said. Not everything needs to be said.
No.
My kids are going to be mad someday when they find out that the ice cream truck plays music when it has ice cream and not only when it has no ice cream, to make children happy when there is no ice cream.
So apparently back in
I stand by it though.
14th century, some letter that the Oxford English Dictionary undid said, "I do assure you, he is unsuspected of any truth or order, notable crime, except a white lie, which is taken for a small, kind of looks like fart, but it's fought in these parts."
Okay.
I don't know. And then apparently Thomas More wrote about it in the 16th century. He's not so superstitious for veracity as to reckon every white lie is black as murder. So,
Whatever. But, yeah, sometimes, especially to children, you lie about Santa. Except Corey said it wasn't really a lie. Yes, Santa is real because Santa is a big man with a beard who gives you presents. And Corey
is a man with a beard. I like it.
We're going to need to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. If there are any children present, please have them leave the room now.
Yeah. Santa is real.
Well, I mean, that's been a discussion in a lot of moms groups in this day and age. Like, a lot of people aren't doing Santa anymore.
Right.
They feel like it's a lie to their children.
It's kind of sometimes worse not to do. I had a friend whose parents just didn't talk to her at all about Santa. Like, it just didn't, like, she got presents, they celebrated Christmas, but they never mentioned Santa. And so then she's in daycare at 3-4 years old. And the point where you start noticing and paying attention to remembering what other children are saying, and they're all talking about Santa, and it scared the crap out of her. And she made her parents leave a sign on their front door. She was terrified this man was going to come break into their house at night. She wanted him to leave the presents out in the yard under the tree. So having that belief would have been less scary than not having that belief, was the impression I got from her.
Well, like your version not lied to me the way that I've kind of been explaining to my oldest, because she started to question, is that the magic of the season, Santa is the embodiment of that, so.
I just don't know anything. So my kids ask me about it. I'm like, I don't know. How do you think that works? And, I've never really seen, but yeah, that's what I noticed too. That seems to be what happens. So I feign a lot of ignorance about all of these magical things. For example, we've got St. Patrick's Day coming up, and, leprechaun traps, not a thing I grew up with. There were no leprechauns visiting houses when I grew up.
No.
And they're going to do that at school, and it's fine. But I have sort of phrased that as cultural difference. people have different religions and cultures. They celebrate different holidays. And like, I don't know why some houses have elves at Christmas time and others don't. I don't know why some houses have leprechauns visit and some don't. It must be a cultural difference because I've never lived in a house that's had a leprechaun. So that's not something that has followed my family.
School makes you do a lot of things.
Well, I mean, if you had to have that many children around you all day, every day, wouldn't you do anything to bring a little bit of joy and magic and fun, excitement, anything you could use to corral them from one place to another? Like, whatever teachers have to do to get through the day, like, I respect
When Charles
that.
came home and said he needed a leprechaun trap, I was like, what are you talking about?
Never heard of that before.
Never.
I blame all of the How to Catch a series because there's unicorns and leprechauns and dragons and
Yes.
so.
Yeah. But we don't just tell white lies to children. We tell them to adults.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Isn't that how we always respond?
My favorite Midwesterner meme. It's like, yeah, if a Midwesterner responds, living the dream, it's like, send help. They are not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, do you think I should do this? Hey, if you like it, I love it. When you know, that means you're a fool.
You're a fool. I guess we should have like a white lie translation, right? I'm fine. The world sucks and leave me alone.
I don't know. I read something not too long ago. It's like, you don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. And to me, it goes right along with that. You just don't, you don't have to engage in everything. You know, you don't have to like overtly lie, but just letting something go on by. I think that's the cost of peace sometimes.
Yes.
Cost of peace in a marriage.
Yep.
In a lot of places.
Because our children sure do wake up and like to choose violence some days.
You know, I thought we got through the time change recently, not too bad. And then, you know, it's like that day, everything was fine. Kids seemed fine. We felt fine. And then that next morning going to school, it's like nobody woke up in the morning. Like we had to wake the baby up. And normally he gets up 2 hours before everyone else, ready to go for the day. And then it was like a switch flipped and he's just running around yelling. Like, why? Can I turn that back off?
Children
Doesn't have to be one or the other.
Children will throw a curveball. Yeah.
Well,
that leads us into our next
it
topic.
does. Talking about children, you two in your legal aid years represented children. And one facet of law where you do represent children. Can you talk about some experiences representing minors and what that's like?
People always ask, how can you represent or advocate for what a child wants? And it's like, they have opinions. They have sometimes very strong opinions. And those opinions can come out at the age of 3 or 4 or 5. Especially, I remember a client, he couldn't have been no more than 5. He wanted to stay home and live with his parents because he wanted to be able to care for his parents. He would cook breakfast. He would make sure his parent was okay while the parent was sleeping. The parent was an alcoholic. So he understood that role and so he had considered judgment, what we call here considered judgment. When we represent children, we either represent them in a best interest attorney role or a child advocate role. And that depends on whether they have considered what we call considered judgment, which is basically a reason for their decision. Can they provide you with a reason? And people are surprised, but yay, children live these lives and they grow up quickly.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I often looked at it, if the child wanted something that was not realistic given the situation, you know, they wanted to return home or, you know, to stay overnight with their parent and that was not going to happen. I took the view of what would it take to make that happen? And that's what I'm going to advocate for. So if the parent would have to, you know, go to substance abuse counseling or, you know, to a rehab facility or something to make them safe for that child to go home to, then that's what I'm advocating for because my client wants to go home and that's how they get there.
Yeah. But sometimes you're in court advocating for something that you don't believe should happen, but you have to do it because the child is the client. And that's the difficult thing. And I think that is with child or adult clients, but especially children, when you have the magistrate or judge looking at you and like, yeah, okay.
And now the legal aid representation is very different than, say, what I think most people would understand to be like best interest attorney, or some places call them guardian ad litems. So how is that different from if you're appointed as a BIA in a case?
I would say the way I looked at the cases and handled talking about the court process with my clients was different. Because often in those cases where the child has been abused, they've been neglected, they've been without a voice in that whole process. So it was really important to me to try to give them a voice and try to give them, a sense that they mattered. Like they were a party to that case. And so that versus a best interest where you're talking about, child custody, and maybe it's just a question of which of two good parents, should more time go to, or should it be equal? It's not healthy for a child in that situation to maybe have that same sense of power and control. It almost is maybe less mentally healthy for them to feel like they get to make that decision. So I think that's kind of the biggest framework shift I had to, when we moved back into private practice and I started taking best interest attorney cases, is shifting that mindset, sort of like a downshift.
Yeah. With my BIA cases, I tell the child, the court is going to decide. I am here just to get a picture, a big picture of what is happening, what's going on, what you would like to see happen, but what you would like to see happen is not automatically going to be what it's going to happen. I am going, and I have to explain my role to my client in a age-appropriate manner, stating that I am going to tell the court what I think is in your best interest. And that may be advocating for what you want, or it may not be. So, and that is, that's a different role than being a child advocate, where you advocate for what the client wants and that client is a party.
So if an attorney is interested in becoming a BIA, or what would you suggest that they do? What do they have to do in order to represent children?
Well, so there, at least in Maryland, there are trainings put on by the courts that you're required to take. And they have a lot of good information about child development, for one, what types of schedules and things are appropriate at different developmental stages, and about interviewing techniques. It's very different to talk to kids, especially kids who may not have an understanding of the court process or why this, stranger is meeting with them and talking to them about their parents.
And there are guidelines in the rules, the Maryland rules, on how to represent children. So definitely read those. And just training is important because children talk differently.
Yes.
There are different stages, ages, and so it's important to know what's age appropriate and how to interact with children on a different level. I'm not going to talk the same way to a child as I do to an adult. Sometimes you have to get in there and play a video game or play a game with them, and then things just come out. So you need to know how to interact with children.
And it seems like being able to put aside your own internal biases, right? Because every family is different, cultural considerations that you need to know of. And
Yeah. I remember this moment when my daughter was little. She was at daycare. The daycare had a lot of rules, very particular rules, form for everything. And just the contrast really struck me one day. Because I was having to, I think, bring in a doctor's note and fill out a form. And someone was coming out to me to look at the baby powder that I had brought, because my daughter kept having these diaper rashes. So to make sure that it was, talc-free and organic, cornstarch, talc-free powder, having to get this approved before the daycare could keep it and use it to change her diaper. And then I had to leave from there and go do a visit with a child who was not that much older than my daughter, who had been like found wandering in a 2-day-old dirty diaper with cigarette butts hanging out of their mouth because that's what they found on the floor. Just priority. Like, the contrast was really, really challenging sometimes.
So what would you call a success? Because sometimes people look at that for lawyers, like you won, but it's what would you consider a success or winning for representing children?
It depends on the case. So sometimes success is reuniting that child with their parents in a safe manner. The parents have gone, say for instance, substance abuse. They've completed their substance abuse program. They've remained clean and sober. They've, are ready to care for their child. Sometimes success is adoption and finding a permanent placement for the child. Sometimes success is just getting that child through.
Yeah. And, for the best interest attorney cases, if that can end the court conflict, maybe neither parent is happy with the recommendation you make. But if that means that the case is over and they're at least going to stop, because the kids pick up on it, even if they don't know there's a court case, they know something's going on with the heightened tension between parents and around schedules and things. So just getting them past that so that they can hopefully have a little bit of normal, that can be good.
I was just thinking about a week or so ago, I saw a former best interest, a client who I was their best interest attorney. And, you don't know if they recognize you. They've grown up and you're like, oh, she looks familiar. And then he heard my name and I heard his name. And then we came up and he gave me a hug and I was like, oh my goodness, that is success, that they're doing okay, that, they are working, completed school, things of that, to see them thrive after all of the court drama, be it a custody case or a child in need of assistance case, to see them successful, because unfortunately the statistics are high, especially for those who age out of the system, that they end up homeless or, it's a cycle, a pattern of behavior that they then themselves become parents of abused, neglected children. So it's just to see them doing well after the case.
Yeah. Well, let's take a cue from the kids that we represent and play a game at recess.
All right. Any wishes on what it should be?
I feel like you be the judge. 2 lies and a lawsuit.
2 lies and a lawsuit.
All right. Let's see. The first one, a business owner sues an influencer for not tagging the business in their post. Number 2, a man sues his wife over their ugly baby.
Oh my gosh.
A woman files a lawsuit against Five Guys, claiming that the name is discriminatory against women. I just have to share a personal story about Five Guys before we continue. Was it after we moved out here? I'm trying to remember the first time I went to a Five Guys. But in any event, I was familiar with them. Wherever I was living at the time, they existed. I'd eaten there. I had enjoyed the sandwiches. I was back in the Midwest visiting family, getting ready to go out for a day of, I think, Christmas shopping with my mom. And we're in the car. I'm driving. And I was like, okay, well, it's going to be lunchtime. While we're out at the mall, we should stop and get something to eat. What do you want to do? Do you want to get Five Guys? She just gave me the strangest look. Just like, food? do you want hamburgers? And she's just looking at me and I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? She's like, burgers? And this Five. I'm like, what was that about? She goes, you just looked at me and asked me if I wanted to have Five Guys. Fast food chain.
Like, oh my, Mom, where's your
Yeah, context is important. No, that was not a part of her context up until that moment. Very different kind of day than the one I had envisioned.
That is.
That's pretty good.
All right, so we've got influencer who didn't tag, ugly baby, and 5 guys discrimination.
Well, my initial thought was the audacity of guys. So, of course, it's going to be that ugly baby. But then the Karen of the 5 guys kind of works, too. So,
I'm going to go for ugly baby.
That was calling to me, the audacity of the ugly baby. Like, sir, if that really happened, sir. Let's talk about genetics and how you played a part. And was the baby really ugly? But we don't know if that's true.
I mean, like, objectively,
they're like little aliens.
babies don't come out looking cute. Like, they don't come out looking cute. Like, covered in weird goo. Like, they're not.
Weird shaped heads.
Yeah, that's
Depending
why.
on how they're birthed.
I mean, that's why genetically they look like the fathers right away, right? To give that
So they don't
tie.
get
And
eaten.
then, women are flooded with all those random hormones to make you think that baby is cute. They grow into cuter, but they come out real weird looking.
Ugly baby.
Influencer, ugly baby, 5 guys.
Yeah.
I'll be the odd person out and go with influencer. I don't know.
I'll go with 5 guys just to give us each one.
All right. And the answer?
Ugly baby. See? The audacity.
What is the
The
context?
audacity.
Tell us about this.
Why am I not finding it? Oh, okay. Here we go. Jian Feng from China saw his newborn daughter, who he said was incredibly ugly and did not look like either parent. He accused his wife of cheating on him. At that point, she admitted she had several plastic surgeries before they had met. He sued on the ground of false pretenses, claiming she misled him by hiding her cosmetic history. He won the case. And his wife was made to pay him more than $120,000.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. And watch that baby grow up to be beautiful.
Oh, probably.
That is crazy.
I don't even know what to do with that.
It's the audacity of, yeah.
We need like that red flag man running
Oh,
by.
yes. Oh, we should get a red flag.
Just
Maybe a smaller one. I don't think that
Small
big
one.
one would fit in here and knock everything down.
nope. We could just have a red flag and a green flag. Red flag, green flag.
How often do green flags come up in here, though? Honestly?
We wouldn't be a law firm if there was a lot of green flags.
We don't get to see the green flag all that often.
No.
Well, we have now come to our last segment, Childhood Traumas, where we're going to read a wild case story from Attorney on Reddit. Thank you, Marsha.
Mastodon Bob.
Sure.
My brother is a divorce attorney. His most memorable case, he was representing a guy in a divorce custody battle who was accused of horrific child abuse. Very graphic, very detailed depositions from the young kids against daddy. Things look grim. Then my brother, a failed actor, notices the deposition transcript done by social workers under oath contains a question at the end from one of the kids. Did I hit my marks? He wonders how little kids know about acting jargon. Subpoenas wife's personal checking account during discovery. Sure enough, acting lessons. Deposes an extremely sketchy acting coach, quote unquote, and panic coach produces DVDs of practice interrogations with the kids. Hours of coaching the kids on exactly what imaginary things to say about daddy. He says it was his one and only Perry Mason moment in 20 plus years of practice. And dad got sole custody of the kids, which he rightly deserved to get.
That's insane.
That was crazy. Yeah.
Have you ever had a Perry Mason moment?
One. I had a case where it was a contested custody case. Some questions about the fitness of not my client, but the opposing party. And so there's supposed to be visitation. There was a home study done to ensure that the home the child was going to was appropriate. And, person came out to look at it, wrote a report. And then when the child comes back from that visitation to my client, says, well, that's not where we went. That's not what it looked like. That's not the way we drove. That child ended up coming in and talking to the judge, and they looked on like Google Maps together and showed the route that they took, and they were not going to that house. And my final big moment was subpoenaing the lease, and it turned out that they just used a friend's house for the home study and like turned the pictures around. And so then they forged the lease. And if you're going to forge a lease with your friend, A, you should spell your friend's name correctly. But B, it also shouldn't be the same friend that you used to sign an affidavit of service for serving the other party, because if you then misspell their name and you don't match the signature, that's very visible in court.
Yeah.
So that was, I will never get another moment like that. It was so wonderful. Of course, that case continued to be contested for years and years after that. I think that child's probably 18 now, but.
Yeah. Well, I had that recent one with a foreign subpoena coming back and finding money and things that a party was not disclosing. So that was pretty good. My favorite, though, was my first criminal trial back as a public defender. My client came in and said, what is in the police report didn't happen. I was like, all right, well, let's
Not the last time someone told you that.
Not the
right?
last time someone's told me that, but let's believe them because that's what we should do. And I got the video because at the time, thankfully, the state troopers did in fact have dash cams. Now it's more prolific with body cameras and stuff like that. At the time, it wasn't. And sure enough, what was in the police report was not what happened on video. And me as a little new public defender was really nervous about it until I got up to the state's attorney's desk and said, we're going to have a trial. And that trooper did say to me, what's your client going to say it's not his pants? I did smack him up and down in court with his police report, not matching his video. Still a trooper today, but you can only do so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, not guilty on all counts.
Yay.
Yeah. But they do happen rare. I mean, that would
Yes.
15 years in between. So
Right.
Most often people are lying and you just can't prove it.
Yeah.
Right.
How many
And
times have I had
that's
to tell my client there is no liar, pants on fire objection?
Right. That is they're lying, but you just can't prove it.
Yeah.
Or even if you can prove it, nobody cares because they're not lying about anything that really matters in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, when I was at Legal Aid, I had a mother forge her urinalysis results, and she did a darn good
Oh,
job.
nice.
But she didn't include the watermark, like the lab, I forget what it was, but the lab's watermark on the urinalysis results. And you start looking at the previous ones and then say, something is different. Oh, yes, the watermark is missing. So sure enough, we had to let the judge know. And they're like, and that the children were about to go home.
Oh, goodness.
I think the children went home. Yes, the children did go home. They took the children out of state. And the day after the hearing, that's when people started questioning the lab results. Because everything happened so fast during the hearing. Here's my lab results, yes. But then you look back and it's like, oh, no, this is not correct. And so the judge did order them to bring the children back.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's crazy. People do some crazy things.
They do. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of All the Legal Ladies. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe and listen to the audio on your favorite digital streaming platform. Any last words of advice?
Be careful whose name you forge on documents.
That is not permission to forge anything. We will see you.
Don't put on your friend's pants.
And when someone suggests Five Guys, they're not actually talking about.
It's just a cheeseburger.
It's just a cheeseburger. We'll see you next week.